For most of the world, this face represents the ultimate symbol of reconciliation. We know the story of the peaceful elder who emerged from 27 years in prison to end apartheid. But there is a hidden architecture to his life that predates the portrait of the peaceful grandfather. This was a man who navigated a high-stakes world of hidden aliases, of clandestine cells, and global intelligence networks. His influence eventually became so pervasive that his name left the history books and entered the physical sciences, with physicists naming an atomic particle in his honor. Understanding how he changed the map of the 20th century requires analyzing his career through the lens of a long-term strategic operative, one who understood that survival in a police state required mastering the tools of covert warfare. By the 1950s, the South African government had transformed the country into a fortress. Protests weren't just met with police lines. They were met with Saracen armored vehicles and a massive show of force designed to intimidate the population. He realized that as long as the resistance remained a public, centralized target, the state could simply mobilize its military to crush it whenever it reached a critical mass. He devised the M Plan to take the movement underground, making the organization impossible to destroy. Resistance branches were divided into tiny units. On a single street, a steward managed just 10 houses. Information traveled house to house, creating a network operating entirely beneath government surveillance. This structural shift turned a vulnerable political organization into a decentralized network that could lose its top leaders and still continue to fight. When the government outlawed the movement in 1960, he vanished. As the police launched a nationwide manhunt, he became a shadowy figure the press dubbed the Black Pimpernel. He spent nearly 2 years on the run, adopting the tradecraft of a deep cover operative. He traveled across the country using a rotating series of disguises, frequently posing as a laborer or a chauffeur to slip through police cordons unnoticed. Under the alias David Matsamai, he slipped across the border to secure military training and international support for his new armed wing, Umkhonto we Sizwe. He was no longer just an activist. He was the commander-in-chief of a revolutionary army. His evasion finally ended in 1962, not because of a mistake by his network, but because a CIA operative provided his exact location to the South African security forces. The government had the man, but they had failed to dismantle the decentralized machine he left behind. The cells were already active, and the network was designed to outlast its architect. After being sentenced to life in prison, he was moved to Robben Island, a desolate, windswept facility surrounded by the shark-infested waters of the Atlantic. The state attempted to bury him here in an 8-by-7-foot cell. They restricted his contact with the world to a single visit and 2 letters per year, all heavily censored and under constant guard. Even under this total surveillance, he continued to lead. He used coded letters to bypass censors and utilized his legal team to smuggle strategic directives out to the ANC leadership in exile. He turned the legal system into a theater of resistance, flooding the prison authorities and the courts with legitimate requests that forced the state to acknowledge his continued presence and authority. These smuggled orders helped coordinate a global movement. Soon, international dock workers were refusing to unload South African ships, and foreign capital began to flee the country as the pressure mounted. By attempting to isolate him in a remote cell, the government unintentionally provided the friction he needed to ignite a global campaign. Every measure used to silence him only further solidified his role as the focal point of a worldwide resistance. By the mid-1980s, the Bureau of State Security realized that his imprisonment was more dangerous to the regime than his death would be, provided they could justify that death to the world. A warder approached him with a sophisticated escape plan. It included smuggled keys, a false beard, and a detailed map out of the facility. It looked like a perfect opportunity to return to the underground. But why would a security apparatus that spent decades hunting a man suddenly build him a path to freedom? The entire plan was an assassination plot. The intelligence agency intended to stage an escape and then kill him in a shootout at the airport. They needed him to be an armed, fleeing fugitive. If he died while violently resisting arrest, The state could label him a terrorist and justify his death to his international supporters. He saw the trap for what it was. He analyzed the offer, recognized the patterns of his enemy, and simply refused to leave his cell. His tactical patience paid off. He remained in custody until he could negotiate the total dismantling of the regime. In 1994, he stood before a new nation as the first president elected by all of its people. His survival was a victory of long-term planning over immediate action. To understand the man who outlasted an empire, we must look past the icon of peace to the strategist who won the shadow war.